All right, welcome to the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History. And I'm at my old friend's house, Bob Krause, and his lovely wife, Denise. And if you don't know, Bob wrote this book on turtling about his life in the animal business, his life basically of having a turtle bowl when he was a little kid, morphing that into, well, pet shops, manufacturers, distributors, everything, and finally into turtle conservation. So if you haven't gotten this book yet, Turtling, about Bob's life story, you should. So this is all my notes that I made, which I'm going to talk about in this video. And anyways, Bob, thank you so much for talking to us today.
It's about time you're here, Gary. We've been talking a long time about you visiting.
I know.
And to get you off that West Coast was a real feat. So
I know.
Welcome.
And you're tormenting me by this terrible weather we're having here, looking at the ocean in front of me with dolphins jumping and sea turtles coming on the beach. I mean, oh my God, this is pure torture. All right, so let's start in the beginning. Tell me when you were a kid and your mom took you into a department store and got you a turtle, and that changed your life.
Oh my goodness, Gary, it seems, well, it was eons ago, 75 years ago probably.
That long?
That long. And I was about 5 years old, and we used to go to a shopping area called Six Corners back then on Irving Park, Milwaukee, and Cicero Avenue.
Okay.
And it was all these streets converging where there was a Sears Roebuck, there was a Keys department store, there was Walgreens, and all these women's clothing stores. And my favorite, of course, was Woolworths. And when we were done shopping, we'd go to Woolworths. And I just couldn't help but hurry up and finish that chocolate phosphate. And those parakeets in the pet department were calling. I could hear them.
Bob, come here.
Yeah, and I'd run over there, and oh my gosh, they had all kinds of pets in this Woolworths. They had little BB parrots and tropical fish of all kinds, and goldfish and cockatoos and parakeets. And my favorite, of course, was a big aquarium that had stacks of these little green turtles. And I always wanted a turtle. And make a long story short, my mom rewarded my brother and I got a little turtle to take home that day for helping her carry the shopping bags.
How cool.
And that little turtle lived in a little plastic bowl with a little palm tree. I remember that. And I don't think he lasted too long, to be honest with you, Gary. He probably only lasted about 3 or 4 months, but I enjoyed him, and that stuck with me the rest of my life. And loving that turtle took me to my grade school years, where I'd end up going and collecting and finding a painted turtle. Or my uncle would go golfing, and he'd pick up a painted turtle walking across the fairway, and he'd bring it to me. And my grandmother's wash tubs became my aquariums. And one thing led to the next, and one turtle led to a next, and the rest is history. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, we're just going to back up for 1 second, because you wrote about some iconic places in here, and I just want to get the information about these before it goes away. So in the late 1960s, you went to Auburndale Goldfish Company in Chicago. Mm-hmm. The owner was James Schneider.
Right.
And he was an old-time goldfish enthusiast. And was he the original owner?
Yes, he was. And we're talking about James Sr. now, because there was James Sr. and then there was James Schneider Jr.
Okay.
And Jr., who I think he's passed away now. He's probably, if he's still alive, he's probably well into his 80s, pushing 90 years old. Wow. Well, his father is who started the business.
Right.
And their claim to fame was goldfish.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was that where you got that beautiful jewel aquarium that I bugged you for?
No, actually, Gary, that wasn't where, but that's where I saw my first jewel aquarium. It was in his office.
Really?
I couldn't take my eyes off. It was a medium-sized one, maybe equivalent to like a 30 or 40 gallon, but it was beautiful, mint condition. But in answer to your question, the brass jewel aquarium that you hornswoggled out of me?
Yes.
The one that you have now?
Yes.
The one that I miss so much?
I know.
This was back in 1972, a year after I opened my first pet store. We had a 9,200 square foot pet store, which was unheard of at the time. And that was my dream, to do something different. And we had a gentleman who came into the store one day, and he said that he was one of the original designers of the antique jewel aquariums. His name was Alan Morling.
Huh.
And he lived in Wooddale, Illinois, which was a northwest suburb not too far from Elk Grove Village, where our store was.
Okay.
And he said that he had 2 aquariums that he had made for himself. There were only 2 that size that he made. And showed me pictures, and he said that he'd love to have a place to put it on display. Would I mind if he brought it and we put it on display in the entranceway? And I thought, my gosh, that's wonderful, be a nice conversation piece. After he delivered it, we set it all up. We didn't put fish in it or anything. We just had it on display. And we got a lot of comments. And one thing led to the next. And when Alan would come in, I'd talk to him a little bit. And I'd say, Alan, I'd like to buy it from you. And to make a long story short, I probably, maybe paid a few $100s for it. I'm not sure here. But anyways, that aquarium gave us a lot of fame. We brought it to a pet show at McCormick Place, and we put very rare goldfish in it, koi from Japan, and we put velvet stanchions all around it, and we hired an Andy Frayne usher to stand their guard. And we had people all around looking at this aquarium with these beautiful, expensive koi fish from Japan. And we ended up on the front page of the business section of the Chicago Tribune.
Really?
Yeah. And it was just publicity. And that's the history of that aquarium. And we then brought it back. We had it in the store for a few years, and then one thing led to the next. We moved into a larger location. We put the aquarium in storage, and that's where this guy from Zoo Med would come by and look at it, and he'd drool and look at it all the time. And he said, "That belongs to me. That belongs to me." Well, that's what happened. So I ended up sending it to you.
And it took me, 40 years, 30 years to get that aquarium out of you?
Well, yeah.
And you would always tell me it's in a truck. It's crated it up. It's going to you. You were really good at really getting my goat.
But you were patient, here. I want you to know you were very patient.
Very patient. I waited forever. So what about Swanee Water Gardens? What can you tell me about them? Located in a bad part of town.
Yeah, Swanee Water Gardens was in a very, very rough area of downtown Chicago. And it was in our Skid Row. It was where there were a lot of unfortunate individuals who had alcoholic problems or mental problems, and the streets were just littered with these people everywhere. And you had to think twice before you even drove down that street. It was on Madison, just west of Canal Street, and that's where Swanee Water Gardens was.
How weird.
Swanee Water Gardens was a tropical fish and aquatic plant wholesaler. And he was in an old building that should have been torn down probably 10 years before I discovered it. And I remember he used to bring in birds. And I remember behind the store, there was a telephone pole that had so much dry grass all around it. It looked unbelievable. And it was all full of monk parakeets that had obviously gotten loose on one of his shipments. And they lived in Chicago. That's probably the beginning of these Quaker parakeets, they call them, living in Chicago. They would actually do well in the wintertime in Chicago's winter.
Really?
By staying in a very dormant stage inside that nest. They would congregate together in that nest.
How amazing.
But anyways, Swanee Water Gardens was specialized in goldfish, not too many tropical fish, but a lot of exotic plants. And I remember on my first visit there, they were so proud of their filtration system. They wanted to take me down into their catacomb basement with the wooden stairs that could barely, they were wobbling. And I remember going down and the walls were dripping wet, and half of the trees and indoor plants that they had in the front window were growing. The roots were growing through the floor and into the basement. But that was Swanee Water Gardens. We never did business with them, but I was doing my homework before I opened the store by visiting Auburndale Goldfish, Swanee Water Gardens, and eventually
Pioneer Pet Supply.
Pioneer Pet Supply. That was the biggest one at the time.
They were the biggest distributor. They didn't have live pets. They just had dry goods, right?
Not at the time they didn't, but they eventually got into tropical fish.
Wow. And then the president was Giff Gardner.
Giff Gardner.
What a name.
Yeah. He had a reputation that preceded himself. I remember we opened our first store November 21st, 1971, after a lot of homework and drawing ideas, and we were just so proud of it. Gary, you wouldn't believe it. And on our grand opening day, we had so many people visiting, many of which were just there to see what was going on. This crazy guy opening a 9,700 square foot pet store. It got to be nuts. Well, I looked at the front, and all of a sudden, who did I see walking in the front door? Giff Gardner and his whole entourage. He had 4 or 5 guys in. And they didn't walk through the store. They stood up front and they just observed and they watched and they saw literally all of the people. We had lines of people going out of the store buying things, and the aquarium department was crowded. The puppy department was crowded. The aisles were just packed. And I remember me standing there. He didn't know who I was, and I'm listening to their conversation, and Giff's telling his employees, yeah, this is unbelievable. Someone who would do something like this at this time, he'll never make it. He'll never make it.
That just makes you more determined, doesn't it?
It's exactly what it did.
Yeah.
You know, whenever someone, if you're an entrepreneur and someone tells you you can't do it,
Right.
that's all you want to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Gary, you've had that experience yourself many times.
From my own mother. God. I love you, Mom, but that was tough sometimes.
It sure was. But, you know, with hindsight, you look back, those are all lessons. And I couldn't I couldn't emphasize the importance of sticking to it, working hard, and believing in yourself. And if you know you've done your homework, you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's, you're going to make it. And I look at that. I know that entrepreneurs today are a lot different. We've got so many things today that make it easier for you to run your business, but at the same time, it makes it easier for people to get in there and compete with you.
That's right.
So competition is the biggest thing nowadays. Back then, if you had a good idea and you worked hard, you had a pretty good chance of success.
Well, if you had a good idea and you put it out on the market, you had about 8 months until somebody knocked you off.
Exactly.
Everything moves at the speed of light now.
Yeah.
You don't have that luxury anymore.
Exactly.
Everything moves so fast.
Yeah. The one thing that we have to have, though, and I've learned this from traveling overseas, we don't have it as Americans, and that's called patience. Yeah. We want everything tomorrow.
That's true.
The Asian culture, they believe in the future, and they'll do something with patience, and they know that they're doing this for the next generation and 20 years and 30 years, even though that is changing now over there as well. But they still have that key called patience that we don't have as Americans.
No, aren't you amazed by how they can take one thing and look at it and then design it and I mean, literally go over it 100 times before they actually make it and do such an amazing job. I mean, it blows me away. I mean, I see people in Asia that specialize in one thing their entire life, but they're so good at it, you know, nobody could touch them.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because that is so true. And the younger generation now coming in is making it happen much faster.
Yeah.
You know, with the technology that's out there and with AI now, we only can dream of what it's going to look like in, I don't want to say 10 years, I want to say 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Oh, it's crazy. So, all right. So I won't bore you with some of these other things that I want to talk about as far as old companies. We'll come back to that later. But let's talk about Noah's Ark. Okay. So you purchased goods from Aquatics Inc. and MP Krause and Son when you had Noah's Ark. And how long did you have Noah's Ark for? That was your big store, right?
Yeah, we opened on November 21st, 1971. 3.5 years later, we cut a deal with our landlord builder, and we went in with him and built a new building across the street, and we moved the entire operation into a 20,000 square foot
Oh
location.
my God.
And at that point,
That's the one I went into, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at that point, we started wholesaling because we were buying a lot of lines on a direct basis because we could move the volume.
Mhm.
And we thought, well, we had an awful lot of pet stores that would come into the Chicago area and they wanted to visit that big pet store. And we became friends with a lot of retailers. And they say, well, where can I find this? And here, I'm either importing it or buying it direct myself. So I ended up wholesaling to them. And that's what started our wholesale company, NAPCO Distributing Company.
Mm-hmm.
So we opened up in the building we were in. It was a condo. We occupied about 22,000 square feet, and we bought another unit, 3,000, another unit, 3, until we eventually owned the whole building. And we started wholesaling until 1985 when I bought Pets International. And then it just skyrocketed.
It blew up.
Yeah, then it went crazy. And as far as how long we owned Noah's Ark, our whole career of retailing spawned 22 retail stores. We ended up starting out with leasing departments in an upscale nursery called Amling's Flowerland. Uh-huh. They had pet departments in their stores, and they just couldn't run them as well as they wanted. When they visited our store, they said, how would you like to come in and run our stores? Well, that just started snowballing the volume. And then we opened another store, independent. We opened 2 more stores in different malls. Mm-hmm. And then a guy by the name of Barry Myers, mm-hmm. he owned a company called Chicago Bird and Cage. And they had a retail stores called Pet World. They had 11 stores in the major malls in Illinois.
Right.
He hated the pet business. His father owned Pets International, Sid Myers.
Right.
And his father wanted him to continue with his retail stores because he was a good customer of his.
Sure.
But Barry didn't like the retail business, and he came to me and he said, would you be interested in acquiring our company? The rest is history. Over a 6-month period of time, we took over 12 more stores, and it was it was a lot of work, but we did it. And we eventually converted all of them into our mindset, into training employees. We put together manuals. We had Christmas parties, and we just upscaled and created such a family. We had over 200 employees, and it was just a beautiful thing where we were all working together. And our number one priority was the pet.
Right.
We always said, that's our priority. And if you have to compromise anything and lose a customer or lose a product or whatever, okay. But you don't compromise the health of that pet and the welfare of that pet. And that served us pretty well.
So, and that's kind of how you got Pets International, was Sid sold you the business.
Well, Pets International was a supplier of ours.
Right.
Sid Myers wanted me to do more business with him because I was doing business with Votoy and Ethical and Super Pet. The 3 were competitors.
Right.
So he invited me out to Arlington Park Racetrack for an afternoon of the races so I can see his horse called Super Pet win a race. And I remember sitting there talking to Sid. And Sid was a very, very strong person. You either loved Sid or you hated him. And people in the industry, that's where they felt. Sid was a tough competitor. He had a reputation of copying a lot of companies' best products and lowering the price on them because he'd bring them in out of China.
Right.
But anyway you look at it, he brought me to the racetrack with the intention of getting me to commit to do more volume with him because we're right down the street. He said, I'll give you 90 days terms and you work with my money, Bob, and we could do a lot more volume. And in the conversation, I looked at Sid and I said, Sid, I says, if you ever think of selling your business, why don't you call me? And he looked at me and says, Bob, you don't have enough money. And that was it. It was sort of like Gift Gardner telling me he'll never make it. Well, one thing led to the next, and about a year goes by, and Don Dahlstrom used to work for me. He was my vice president, and he was friends with Tom Miller, who was the accountant for Lou Locke,
Sure.
who owned Harper Leather Goods.
Right.
They did rawhide bones and leather leashes and stuff. And Lou wanted to become the biggest competitor of Hart's Mountain. And his goal was to make it Harper Mountain instead of Hart's Mountain. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get into that mass market and sell his Harper goods and start importing cat toys and aquarium products and so on. So when Sid was thinking about selling his business, Tom Miller and Don Dahlstrom put them together. And Lou Locke sat in that office, and they were in the process of closing a deal. When I heard about that, I was so upset. I had tears in my eyes because I wanted that company so bad. The next day, I get a phone call, and I was told that the deal fell through. And Sid Myers was upset, hopped on a plane and flew back down to Boca Raton, and he was very upset that the deal didn't go through. So I still had Barry Myers, his son's telephone number. I called Barry and I said, Barry, as I hear that your dad was selling his business and the deal fell through, do me a favor, can you give him a call, tell him to come back to Chicago, I want to buy the company. And Barry said, I'll see what I can do. Well, in a week and a half, we had a meeting in his office, and the rest is history. Yeah, it was in 1985 that I bought Pets International.
Wow.
And Pets International had a very, very bad reputation of not the best quality and knocking items off. And it took me a couple years to kind of weed that old inventory out and start developing new product, because that's what I was doing before. I was developing different product that I said, wow, I wish someone would do something like this.
Yeah.
We need this for our animals.
Sure.
Well, I was then in a position to start doing that.
That's amazing. So you needed a foundation. You needed a launch pad for your ideas, for your product ideas.
You know, you call it a launch pad. I always refer to it as an empty train moving pretty fast. And all I had to do was get all the junk off of that train and put good stuff in that train, and I could move it even faster.
There you go.
And that's what we did. And it took, the rest of it, that was from 1985. And then when I sold the company 20 years later to Central Garden and Pet, what a race that was. And I look back and I snap my fingers and say, what the heck happened to the time, you know? We had everything at that in the beginning, and then I started realizing, why am I doing this? I'm competing with the Hagens and the Penplaxes, and these guys are knocking me off on my good items. So we then started saying, what should we do? I said, well, my passion is turtles and reptiles. So I was wanting to get involved in developing reptile products, but there was a guy in the West Coast doing such a damn good job. I couldn't compete with that guy out there.
Who was that guy? Didn't want to hurt your friend.
Yeah, and I thought, nah, where's an opportunity? And I thought, well, hamsters and guinea pigs and ferrets are going to get more and more popular, and chinchillas, and no one's touching that stuff. And that's what we did. We specialized in that while I loved my turtles on the side. And
well, you know, one thing you did that was really brilliant, and because I know we're jumping around a little bit, but the CritterTrail, there was a window that opened, and you jumped through it. Because the Habitrail was invented by Metaframe, by probably one of the Willinger brothers, that kind of thing, I think. I'm pretty sure. I get different people to say they invented it. I don't know who it was, but anyways, it came out of Mattel. You're right.
Yeah.
And then after Mattel sold it, it kind of fell apart. You know, it went to Hagen for a while, but Hagen didn't really jump on the bandwagon, I didn't think. I think they kind of like let it flounder because I think they wanted to do their own brand. And they did. They did the OSPO or OXO. But you know, to me, it was missing something. It didn't really have good marketing involved in that. And then you came and did the CritterTrail, and you did 7 or 8 different varieties. And you did one that if they bought this CritterTrail, it benefited breast cancer. And you did one glow in the dark, and you did one with this playground on top with all these different things they can come and play on. And I thought, God, he's brilliant. He's really come in, and it's rare for somebody to come in and take the market away from the originator. And you did.
You know, Gary, I appreciate the kind words, but I myself have not done that. I had good people.
Right.
And that's what makes an organization. You have to have someone on top, as you very well know, that's a good director. and you got to hire good people and get out of their way. Let them do things, coach them, let them make mistakes.
Right.
But don't make too expensive of mistakes. That's what I used to tell them. And don't ever repeat the same mistake.
No truer words have been said.
Yeah.
But Bob,
but as far as the CritterTrail is concerned, Gary, I don't want to differ with you because I agree with you and I applaud you and I thank you very much for the comments. There's no one in the pet industry that I admired more than Rolf Hagen.
Yeah.
Rolf Hagen that company has done so much good for the pet industry. Most people don't even realize what they've done. They were good people, the whole family, and they were respectable, and I learned a lot from them.
Yeah, that's
great. I'll tell you a funny story. This is when I was touching on some reptile products and not having a complete focus direction on small animal products, but I came out with a product called Hanging Gardens. And no one had this in the industry at all. And there was such a need for it, not only for the reptile category, but for the aquarium industry. And it was beautiful, plastic, lifelike plants with suction cups that you could suction cup on the back of the aquarium. Mm-hmm. You could do it on the side. You could put it on the bottom, cover with gravel. We call them Hanging Gardens. And we did so well with them for about a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, Hagen came out with their version of suction cup plants. And I know you have some as well. But anyways, at the time, Hagen came out with them. And that really upset me. And I thought, how am I going to handle this? I don't want my attorney to call Rolf, but I'm just going to pick up the phone. So I picked up the phone. I called Rolf. And I said, Rolf, this is Bob Krause. We got a problem. And I explained to him, I says that you're most definitely your company is infringing on a patent that I have, and I want to know what we can do to resolve this. I'm not happy about it. Yeah, I'll get back with you. He calls me back and he says, Bob, he says, why don't we have a face-to-face meeting? I says, okay, Rolf, that's a good idea. The next day I hopped on a plane. I flew up to Canada. It was Toronto or forget where. Montreal, yeah. And Rolf himself picked me up at the airport. He said, Krause, very good. I'm so happy you're here. You come with me. We go to his favorite restaurant. And as we park the car, we're both walking in. There must have been 6 people that almost bowed down to him. And everyone knew Rolf as we walked into the restaurant. And 2, 3 people at different tables he had to stop and talk to. Well, he set the stage. So here I am, impressed like you have no idea. I'm the little guy, and Mr. Hagen, he was like a brick building walking through the restaurant. We sat in his favorite little table, and he says, okay, well, he says, this is for you, and he gives me a silver dollar. And I guess he gives everyone a silver dollar who comes and visits him, or he used to. And he says, well, what are we going to do? He says, I tell you what, I'd like to propose. And he tells me, he says, Bob, he says, you let me work and continue. I need it for my reptile category because he was just building his reptile category.
Right.
He says, I need it. It's an important item for me. He says, I will give you $10,000. He says, a gift to you. You just let me continue the way it's going. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to handle this? So I looked at him and I says, Rolf, I'll tell you what. I says, I don't want $10,000. I says, but I'm going to let you work on my patent. Now, I didn't tell him that I was phasing it out. But I said, you can work on my patent, but I want a check from you for $1. He looked at me, he says, here. And he started handing me I said, no, I don't want $1. I want a check with $1. Just send it to me. He says, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're going to do. You're going to show everyone the check. Why not? Well, to make a long story short, I admired the man. He's a human being. He was a human being. His brothers, they all did very well for him. I just saw that Dieter passed away.
Yeah.
I don't know what is Horst still around?
Horst still around.
Yeah. And I know that Rolf Jr. is still running the company.
I just interviewed him, I think last year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was great.
I'm glad that they have not went the way that so many of us went.
Yeah.
And sold out to the mass market, so to speak. But anyways, getting back to how I feel about my CritterTrail, yes. It wasn't just the design, it was everything, the timing was perfect. We had a marketing and sales department that was so perfect. We started direct container supplying all of the wholesalers in the country right from our factory in China, where we didn't touch it. And we saved like 25 to 30% as a result of that. We passed it right on to our customers. So our margins weren't affected, and they were moving the volume. And then we had our salespeople detailing stores and pushing it through the stores. And my son, Bob Jr., he started a program of not just putting product on the wholesaler shelves, but teaching them how to pull the product off of their shelves into the retailers. And we went around and did that for the wholesaler, all the major wholesalers. That was our claim to fame, was CritterTrail. And that's what Central Garden and Pet looked at, I'm sure, along with all of our product categories, and that's why they bought our company. So,
Curious, and again, we'll jump around a bit, but why did you decide to go on KT? Why did you absorb Pets International into KT?
I had no choice in the matter. KT was owned by Central Garden and Pet.
Right.
KT was the only company in their umbrella that did any bird and small animal products, all consumables.
Right.
When they bought our company, we had all the hard goods for small animals, no bird.
Right.
All small animals. So it made sense to the people above to put both of those companies together in what they call a strategic business unit, an SBU. The original president of KT didn't like the idea, and it wasn't part of his contract, and he ended up leaving.
Really?
Yeah, and then they came to me and said, Bob, we want you to be the president of both the companies. So I spent more time driving up to Chilton, Wisconsin, and back to Elk Grove Village, back and forth. Yeah. And we did well. We brought both those companies back together. We married a lot of products together. We had a lot of synergy together with these products. It made all the sense in the world. But it wasn't mine anymore, and I wasn't in agreement with a lot of things that were happening.
Yeah.
And I was reminded by some business executives that I associated with that I had to get used to the fact that it wasn't mine anymore.
Right.
And I'm working for someone, and they have to make the decision. They can see a bigger picture.
Right.
And a publicly traded company, you're really, really working for the stockholders.
Right.
And if something doesn't fit into that mindset, they're not going to let you throw the dice on new product development or buy machinery the way you know you need it. And
right.
So, but
isn't that your quarterly earnings call when you're on the phone and talk about dollars
well, then you know what I'm talking about. And believe me, I sweated those telephone calls.
Yeah.
And thank God I had Mark Proctor, who was my CPA, and he was my VP of finance, and he handled most of that because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love turtles. That's all what it's about. That's what life is all about. The turtle is what put me into this whole thing. Thank God I was able to afford to have turtles on the side in my whole life. And now when I look back, I say, wow, I got involved with the conservation aspect, did a lot of herping. I'll tell you a funny story here. Being a retailer and then a wholesaler, you're business minded, so you're always profit minded. You always want to buy low, sell high. You know what margins are. You know what everyone in the chain's got to make money. You know that the wholesaler's got to make this, the retailer's got to make that, and can you make money in spite of it? And if it makes sense, you got to do it, right? I remember after I sold my company, I got involved in doing a lot of field herping. I traveled to Madagascar, the Galapagos, did a lot of field herping in the United States with various people out of the Chicago Herp Society and some friends of mine who I've gotten real close with who were really, really into it. We did a lot of herping up in Michigan. And I remember going up there and finding eastern box turtles and wood turtles and spotted turtles. And I couldn't help but look at a eastern box turtle and say $29.95. and I had to slap my hand because as a retailer in a pet shop, that's what we looked at a box turtle at, $30. And spotted turtles, $49.95. I'm seeing this and I had to remind myself that I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And eventually, to this day, I don't do it anymore. And when I go out herping and I do more photographic work and just being out there and enjoying seeing animals in their natural environment and spending time with different organizations and financially supporting their efforts for protecting these animals, it makes me sick to see what in some cases is still happening. As far as some of these animals are being collected at ridiculous numbers and being exported and being sold at crazy numbers in Asia and all over the world. And
none of us like bad actors.
It's terrible.
Yeah, none of us want bad actors around there. They give the good people a bad name, you know?
Yes.
And Profit runs a private company. So when you look at something and you say, that's $29.95, you're not a bad person. It's just you know that if you can't sell it and make a profit, you will lose what you love, which is the business you love, because we love the business too. We love the idea of being a trader. We're the original Dutch traders. That's what we are.
Yeah.
We're the original Dutch traders. And you talk about the employees, every cell needs a nucleus. We're the nucleus.
What's that?
Every cell needs a nucleus.
Oh.
And we're the nucleus that points the direction. That's what we do. You and I are the nucleus direction pointers. We point the direction that we want the company to go.
I thank you for saying that, Gary, because
it
makes me feel better.
You're not giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah.
You know what direction you want to go. So you observe, but you let people have the freedom to be creative, which is so important in business. It really is.
Yeah. There's nothing more pleasurable now, though, Gary, is when I go down Minnesota Key on my bicycle. My wife was out there with her girlfriend not too long ago, and she called me on the phone. Come on down here right away. There's a Florida box turtle. I just picked him up on the road right here, right down the street. And I rode down there with my bike and I looked at him and I'm just admiring him. Nothing more pleasurable to put that little turtle down and watch him go out into the brush and he's gone.
And then you said,
that was a
$29.95 into the bush.
That's a Florida box. That was $49.95.
That's more. $49.95. Come back here. Get back here right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, the reptile industry is a wonderful, wonderful industry, and Gary, not to get your head any bigger than it already is. You saw that a long time ago, and I really thought to myself, this guy's crazy. Look at he's spending all this money, donating all of his efforts and his finances to the consumer. It's got to go to the industry. You were right. I was wrong, because right now it's payback. And ZooMed is such a name that the reptile industry, it's a common bread and butter name.
One of my best, closest friends works for me, Steve Dalrymple. And we're both fish geeks. We come from the fish hobby. I love turtles. I always have loved turtles. It's number 2, but we come from fish. And he looked at me one day and he goes, Garrett, you bet on the right horse. That's exactly what he said. I just kind of smiled. Yeah, you're probably right. You know, because my customers, when I was selling fish, tropical fish, they all said, can you get me reptiles? Can you get me reptiles? Can you get me reptiles? Everyone said that. And I saw it, you know, and then all of a sudden, us baby boomer generation that had fish, it was the younger generation wanted reptiles. I said, this is the generation that's going to have reptiles. But you were the mom generation. You were the generation of the mom with the little kids that want the rabbits, that want the hamsters, that want the gerbils, all that stuff. So we kind of parallel it.
Yeah, but Gary, I like your end so much better than mine.
Well, you did a great job, Bob. You really did a great job. Now tell me about the credit card commercial with the elephant. You actually did commercials for your retail stores?
Well, we actually
Or didn't
go out and pursue it. They pursued us. We had someone come in, probably a marketing firm that came in and asked if we'd be interested in doing a MasterCard commercial. That was back, I don't know if they call it MasterCard today or what, but They wanted to do a commercial, and one thing led to the next, and they asked, do we have access to a baby elephant? And we said, sure. Well, we jumped through hoops, and I contacted a personal friend of mine. His name was Lee Watson. And Lee Watson was, he was a phenomenal individual who was into reptiles, and he was into horses and exotic animals and stuff, but he had real good connections. And I asked him, I said, Lee, do you think we could get a baby elephant over here that was at least trained where he wouldn't run away and cause harm? And he said, I know what I could do. Well, he did. He put us in touch with a guy by the name of Don something or another. I can't remember his last name, out in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the rest is history. He came down with this elephant, and they had probably 25, 30 people in the store with cables all over the place, you know, with their lighting and their cameras, and I don't know how many takes while the store is open that they had to shoot, describing this little boy and his father, looking for a pet and not sure of the parrot and not sure of, I don't want to tropical fish, and what should I get? And the next thing you know, you see a MasterCard being snapped down at the counter by the register with a yellow chain next to it. And then the next scene is the little boy pulling the chain, and they had it all staged with the elephant walking out of the front door. He couldn't fit through the front door, but they had him in the front like he came through the front door. And that aired, I looked for that, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
I had too. So anybody finds that MasterCard commercial with Bob's Pet Shop from a long time ago, an elephant, send us a copy because we can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me about Muhammad Ali.
Oh, that's another funny story. He was a real showman. This is right when he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
He was a world champion at the time, and he lived in Chicago at a mansion on South Michigan Avenue. And I was in my office one day with my brother, and we were going over a few different things, when all of a sudden someone came running into the office and said, "You're not going to guess who's in the bird department. Muhammad Ali." And we went, Well, we dropped what we were doing, and we went out there, and there he was. And he was just as light as could be on his feet, and kind of moving around like he's floating, just like he's the butterfly. And when we introduced ourselves, we took over the sale because our bird department manager was trying to sell him a peach-faced lovebird. And I thought, wait a minute, this is Muhammad Ali. And it turns out that his wife was a bird enthusiast. She had a few different types of birds, and he wanted something really special. And we tried to sell him on a nice hand-fed Amazon parrot, but he kept gravitating over to our cockatoo, which was our store pet. Mm-hmm. And that bird was not for sale because Magoo was her name, and we raised her from a little hatchling, and she would do everything. She'd dance, and she'd say, hello, hello, and she'd do everything imaginable. She was a good draw for people to bring their children in and see a bird. Well, when Muhammad Ali heard that that bird was not for sale, that was it. He wanted that bird. Fast forward. So here we are delivering the bird to his house, my brother and I, and we brought one of our employees who was a young fellow who was studying photography, and he brought his camera with, so he'd take some pictures, And a little side funny story, we're sitting there, and we're showing him how to hold the bird and put it on his arm, and he was doing this because he was really, really concerned about his hands and his fingers. He didn't want anything happening to them. If the bird bit his finger, maybe it would cause a problem. And
they're probably insured. These hands are
of course. So he was like this. And we got some photographs in the book with Muhammad holding it, looking like he's holding a vulture, for crying out loud. But anyways, when that was all done, we went in his little it was like an aviary type room. And we sat at the table, and he made a notion, and the 7 or 8 people that were always surrounding him walked out of the room and left, except one guy. he was the guy with the money. And I think, to be honest with you, I can't remember what we sold Magoo for. Maybe it was $3,000 or something. Back then, it was a lot of money. Shoot. And he ended up handing Mohammed the envelope, and Mohammed takes out a wad of $100 bills, and he's doing this. And he's talking and joking as he's throwing the money down, you know? And I'm watching him, and to me, $3,000, that's like a whole day's sales, you know? I'm so happy about this, you know? I end up taking the money, and I took the money and I start counting it out again. And I got through about the $700 or $800 bill, and Muhammad Ali looks at me and he says, "What, you don't trust me?" And I look at him and I says, "No, I'm just, this is what I always do." And I ended up counting, and I counted 31 $100 bills. He gave me an extra $100.
Ah.
So I says, "Muhammad, you gave me 3,100. He looked at me. He reached over, he took the $100, he put it in his shirt pocket, and he says, "I was just testing you. I was testing you." And after we left, I thought, that son of a gun, you know? You would think he would have gave me the $100. But he said, "I was just testing." I know he was full of beans. He wasn't testing. He made a mistake. Well, I learned something by that comment, because I always say that now. Whenever I'm doing something with anyone and I make the mistake and they catch it, I look at them, I say, "I was just testing you." But Muhammad Ali became a very good customer of ours. He'd come in a couple of times periodically. It didn't take long for Magoo to create a lot of problems for him with the screaming and just the problems. So he said he wanted to return the bird. And we said, "We can't take it back. The state of Illinois won't allow it." That's what we used to tell everyone.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, what can we do?" And I said, "Well, you can bring it back and donate it back, and we could give you the equivalent in merchandise." So we ended up, within a couple of weeks, we set up a 130-gallon saltwater aquarium in his dining room.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't long after that he moved. I think he moved to California.
Okay.
Yeah, he left the Chicago area, but it was an experience and a half. We had an awful lot of famous people that came in our store, a lot of sports players and musicians. But I think Muhammad Ali was the cherry on top of the cake, you know?
Now, one thing, like when I worked in the store, like I started in probably 68, 69, and this is California where everything is illegal. You know, the rarest thing we had was what? I mean, I don't think we had anything rare. I think we had dogs, cats, and I mean, there was nothing. We never even had squirrels. But I look at the list of what you guys had, which was mid 60s or early 60s?
No, actually 1971 is when we opened.
71. You had baby raccoons, Arctic blue foxes,
Yes.
coyotes, prairie dogs, flying squirrels, cootamundis, kinkajous, armadillos, capuchins, of course, macaques, dwarf African hedgehogs. It blows my mind.
And I didn't think it was that unusual because we had a couple of exotic pet stores in the Chicago area, one of which was Animal Kingdom on Milwaukee Avenue, one of my favorite pet stores as a child. This guy had everything imaginable in there, chimpanzees and tigers and all kinds of stuff. So for us to have these animals, although I have to say we were at the tail end of the time when legislation made all of those unavailable.
Right.
And they started with the coyotes. Prior to that, before we even opened, skunks were a very big pet.
Yes. And actually a good pet. If you had
They were a very good pet. One of the largest producers of skunks was a friend of mine, Charles Hume, who was in Arlington Heights, 10 minutes from our place. He went on Gary Moore's What's My Line. People had to guess what he did for a living. And he was the nation's largest breeder of skunks. And everyone got a kick out of that. Well, the state of Illinois passed a law not too long after that. And that put a kibosh on him. But he raised a lot of different types of animals. He eventually became one of the biggest llama breeders in the States. But as far as exotic animals, at the time we didn't realize it was exceptional.
Yeah.
But we had even a little wallaby with a little Joey. I remember we did business with Pet Farm when we first opened up. Bern Levine, Dr. Levine.
Yes.
And we ordered so many different animals that he held for us for about 3 to 4 weeks. for them all to be shipped for our grand opening. And one was that little wallaby with the joey.
Now, we both know a guy named Mickey Jacobson from Reptile Ranch.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
He had a nickname. I won't even say what it was, but he had a nickname and everybody knew Mickey. And he was quite a character. And I think that I'm not positive, but I think a lot of the banana iguanas that are in the country were originally from Mickey. He was good at bringing in unusual stuff from Mexico.
He was the largest red-legged tarantula importer as well. He used to, a little background with Mickey, he was the reptile department manager at Animal Kingdom, one I mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
And he was a rebel,
Always.
Yeah. And he ended up opening his own place in a suburb in Evanston, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And he called it Reptile Land or Reptile something. And you could tell that he wasn't a retailer at heart. He was a reptile importer. Okay. The whole place was covered with reptiles in every kind of container you can think of.
Okay.
Whether it be aquariums or bat cubs or just pulled tins or whatever. He had buckets full of frogs, anything he got in. I remember walking in there one time seeing gopher tortoises from Florida. I saw my first bog turtle at his place too. He ended up going out of business there because he wasn't a good merchandiser. He didn't sell supplies. He probably had a few different things.
Right.
Most of the animals. And then he moved, I think, to Tucson, Arizona.
He did. That's where he stayed.
And he bought a place or he rented it. And the swimming pool was full of, I think, alligators. But I lost track of Mickey Jacobson. I don't know if he's even still alive today.
I don't think he is. I think that he's long gone, but he is quite a character.
He sure was.
He was one.
Yeah.
Now, what can you tell me about Val's Bird Store on Damon?
Oh, yeah. Vale's Bird Store was...
How do you pronounce it? Vale's?
Vale's, yeah. Vahles.
All right.
The owner, and I believe he was the original owner, his last name was Vale. He was an importer of canaries out of Germany.
Right.
And he had it was on a side street right off of, it was Damon Avenue, which was a major street in some areas, but the section of Damon Avenue was all residential, except what used to be a grocery store with an apartment upstairs. And I'm sure the grocery store he took out and made it into his bird store.
Okay.
And you'd walk into the store, old wooden floors that would creak and bend, and he had 2 walls with racks and racks and racks of these little canary cages. I don't know if you can see that one right there.
The tight. Oh yeah, the small one.
Right there on the bar. Grab that one. But anyways, each cage had a little male canary in it, and the place was mind-boggling with song. And there were so many canaries singing, and he had red vectors, and he had all kinds of different types of varieties in feathers, varieties in song. And I learned so much by going into that store. You either have a chopper, which is the open mouth, loud singing canary, right, or you have the roller, which is the closed mouth, very soft singing. And then you have what we call the American warbler, which is kind of a cross between, which is a variety. And that's the popular singing canary that we know today. But anyways, this store had little chairs sitting around where people would come in. I remember seeing the old timers would come and sit there and just listen to their canaries. And they'd either buy one or they would just be there to kill the time. And if you wanted a canary, you say, now that one up there on the 3rd row, 5th one over, that one. He'd take that cage down and set it on the glass showcase right next to your chair. And you could sit there and listen to your bird before you made that purchase. And then he would show you all the brass bird cages he had on the stands. And you'd pick out a cage. He had fresh seed in bins. Wow. And you buy the seed and the song restore and the petamine and all these different conditioners to keep your bird healthy.
He actually made those into containers with his name on it, the store name.
He did?
Yeah, I have some containers. Wow, Val's.
Well, I bought my first canary from him as a result of that. When I was planning on opening my pet store, and 2 years before, I was doing all my research and acquiring animals and studying the business and stuff.
Right.
I had to have a canary, and I bought it for Vales, and it was enjoyable. Yeah, but that was Vales. You don't see that anymore today.
No.
But when we built our store here, I wanted to miniaturize Vales Bird Store and incorporate it in our bird department. And I took the Vales concept where he had his canary wall,
Right.
and I took the concept of another store by the name of Sedgwick Studio. Sedgwick Studio was a store I worked at with the intention of learning everything imaginable about cage birds from a gentleman by the name of Erling Kajeller. And he was a real cool guy. And he was a canary judge originally, and he just loved birds. And he opened this one bird store on the outskirts on the north side of downtown Chicago on Sedgwick Street. Right now, they're multi-million-dollar condos.
Oh my God.
In this area. And I worked for him for about 6 months, learning him everything from hand feeding baby crows to hand feeding warblers, and he even had shama thrushes from Indonesia, and all kinds of exotic birds. And when I opened their pet store, I used his idea of big, round, gigantic cages for our parrots and walk-in aviaries for all the finches, and Vale's concept for the canaries on the wall.
Could you sell crows back then?
They were okay to sell until 1970.
Really?
Yeah. And how they acquired baby crows is that was the time of the year. It was usually the end of April, beginning of May in the Chicago area, where you'd have, I call them trappers, you'd have young people go out and they climb the tree, and they take the baby crows out that were just barely fledgling. And oh my God, they would poop as much as they would eat and as fast as they would eat. The place was a mess. You had to wear a raincoat. It was just like feeding baby minor birds, the same thing. And I remember feeding baby crows like, I had to feed the crows again. Oh my God. But they made phenomenal pets, Gary.
They do.
They would fly to you. They would learn to talk and mimic sounds and words, but they would poop a lot. Being a soft-billed bird,
Right.
the food goes in and goes out just as fast. So
Do you think the American crow is a better talker than the minor bird?
no,
Minor bird.
minor bird's a better talker.
Okay.
We've had minor birds too, and I spoon-fed a lot of those. But yeah,
So tell me about your big tortoise collection. Once you sold I think actually when you were at sort of the end of having your Pets International, I guess you had your tortoise collection when you had Pets International, didn't you?
yeah. I got involved with raising sulcatas. A friend of mine and I partnered out in Florence, Arizona. Al Lawrence. You did business with
I
Al.
did business with Al Lawrence.
Yeah, that's how I got to know him with the cholla wood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he talked about
I think I gave you the wood contact, in fact.
Did you?
I think I did. You
Wow.
owe me. You owe me for that. I never got you.
Well, I thank you for that, sir. I remember spending many times with Al. He lived in a trailer,
Huh?
and he loved exotic cactus. He had so many cactus from all over the world. He got me involved in it so much. But I remember we'd talk till midnight, and I'd fall asleep on the floor in his kitchen. And save me like the $35 I'd have to pay for a motel bill. But I woke up the next morning, I was so stiff. I used to sleep on his floor when I'd go visit him.
Wow.
And when I first visited him, because we did business with him for about a couple of years, and I thought, well, I'm going to be out there. I want to see what his operation looks like. Oh my gosh! I drove down. This was in I don't know where was he located? Somewhere.
It's a weird town in Arizona.
Yeah, it's right outside of Phoenix, but up in the mountains.
Up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyways, I remember renting a car and driving up that 2-lane road. And next thing you know, it's gravel, and it's all red dirt. And I'm looking, and I'm thinking, am I going the right place? And I look, and there's barbed wire fences all along the left-hand side. There's an old rusted down shed garage with all kinds of junk and garbage outside. And I thought, that can't be it. Well, it was it. And I went in there, and he had a very robust woman working for him at the time. And she was there bleaching all this cholla wood.
Uh-huh.
And right next to her Harley Davidson that she had parked alongside there. So I had friendly people there because I rode a Harley at the time as well. But then knew that I would like Al, even though he didn't come out of the shed. I knew I would like him because a sulcata tortoise came walking along the shed and walked right up to me, and I thought, wow, that's cool. So make a long story short, I got to know Al pretty good. We went out to dinner. He loved Mexican food. And then I went to visit him again, and we did nothing but talk about animals all the time, and he loved reptiles. He's the kind of guy who used to sleep out in the range when he was a sheep herder in years past.
Really?
Yeah, and he passed away early. He was, I think, about 75 years old when he passed away. But he thinks he picked something up from the water he drank years earlier, some bacteria or something. That's what his claim was, you know. But anyways, we talked about the possibility of raising sulcata tortoises. This is when they were selling for $125 a hatchling.
Yeah.
It was pretty lucrative at the time. He said, yeah, we could raise a lot of them. And I kind of talked me into partnering with him. And he said, the only problem is he had to get the breeding stock. And I said, well, I could take care of that. I got connections on that. So I contacted Robert Sands in Tampa, Florida. And because I did business with Robert, he did a lot of iguanas and other types of reptiles back home. And he's a good friend even to this day, a real great guy. And I told Robert that I have an opportunity. I need some breeding size sulcata tortoises. Can you help me? And he says, well, don't want to go into the detail and the problems, but it took about 6-7 months for us to bring in about 30 of them. And it was the last shipment out of Mali.
Wow.
And right after that, the problems we start having with the sheep ticks on leopard tortoises and sulcatas shut off the importation of sulcatas and pardalis, leopard tortoise. But anyways, we had this shipment in there. My son James and I think he was 11 years old at the time. We flew on down to Tampa. We spent a couple of days with Robert. And we went through every one of the tortoises, and we weighed them, and we picked them up. And we didn't want the three-legged one. We put that one aside. We didn't want this one. It was snotting, and if it didn't, so we sorted them out, and we picked the best of the best. And we acclimated them. Within 10 days, we shipped them to Arizona. I flew out there, and we rented a vehicle, picked them up at the airport, and we got them all set up, and the rest is history. And every year we produce between 300 and 500 hatcheries.
Wow, that's
for about 7 or 8 years. Then it started going down, and then Al started getting sick, and he couldn't do the heavy lifting anymore. And he said, "Bob, you're gonna have to do something. Why don't you just take the tortoises? And we've done well. Find a home for them." I called a friend of mine by the name of Ty Park, and he was he just acquired his new place in Punta Gorda here. And I said, Ty, I got a deal you can't refuse.
You sent him to Ty.
No, I said, Ty, we'll do a 50-50. It won't cost you anything. We just have to build some pens. I'll bring all my sulcatas over to you. We'll raise them and we'll share 50-50. He said, you got it. So I flew out to Arizona, rented a van, filled it up with straw, 3 bales of straw, loaded up with tortoises, and drove I-10 all the way to Punta Gorda.
Wow.
From Arizona. And
drove straight. You drove straight?
Straight. Well, we stopped in Texas and in Tampa. I had a friend of mine in Tampa. She wanted me to stay with her one night.
Okay.
And so, but anyways, that's what brought me and Ty together in a business. Sense is the sulcatas.
All right.
And then we thought, oh, this is easy. And then that brought up another sore subject. We brought in some Indian star forces that didn't do too well.
Yeah, well, the wildwoods are tough.
Terrible.
Terrible parasite load.
Oh,
Hard to get rid of it.
yeah, it was a bad thing. But anyways, that brought Ty and I together in a different type of light to spend a lot of time with him, and that's where this all came about, you know. So
So, is there anything you would change?
You know, a couple of people have asked me that. And I don't think I'd change a darn thing. I've learned so many good things, and I've learned some bad things, and I've become a better person as a result of both.
Yeah.
So I don't think I changed anything. I went through 2 marriages before Denise and I got married, and Denise is my rock.
Yeah.
She supports me in everything I do, and I don't think I'd be where I'm at today if it wasn't for her. You know, I know I'd be at a certain point, but she keeps me in line. You know, reminds me.
So then my last question for you, I'm
Yes.
glad you said Denise because it segues to my last question.
Yeah.
So you had a layover in Paris and you had 4-hour layover and you got in the cab and for 2 hours you took Denise, you showed her Paris.
Yeah,
For 2 hours.
she didn't appreciate it. You know, for crying out loud, I took her to Paris.
So my question for you is when are you taking Denise back to Paris for a proper vacation? I want to know. I'm sure she's listening back there somewhere.
Well, you know, you got to tell the audience here what actually happened. We were coming back from Spain,
Uh-huh.
and we had a layover in Paris, and I think it was 4 hours.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah, I think it was 4 hours, and our luggage was checked all the way through. We didn't have to worry about that. So I told her, Denise, let's go. We could see all the highlights in Paris in 2 hours. We'll rent an English-speaking cab driver, which isn't easy to find. We ended up finding a Chinese cab driver who could barely speak English, but he did a darn good job. Yeah, it was funny because we'd stop in front of the Lou. Traffic's going by every direction. We'd hop out of the car. We'd stand there in front of the whether it be the Eiffel Tower or wherever, and he'd take a picture. We'd hop back in the car. We'd go to the next side. Yeah, I treated her very good.
I think you have.
Yes.
I think you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for the friendship all these years, and I want to thank you for the interview. And I don't know if you have any closing remarks because I think you've told me everything.
Well, the only closing remark I can say, and it'll be a nice segue as to what you just got done saying. I think as we move on, you got to hold on to your friends.
Right.
And that's the most important thing because I'll be 80 years old in a couple months.
Wow.
And I got a lot to do in the next 10 years. And my friends are all part of it.
Right.
And Gary, you've been a good friend. You've been there, and I've watched you from the sidelines, and we've had fun in the pet industry. And I remember telling you many times that maybe this is the time you should start thinking about your exit strategy. Well, your exit strategy is like having your cake and eat it too.
Right.
Because your exit strategy is keeping what you've got, and that's your love,
Right.
and having another one.
Right.
So the one thing I'll leave you with is to take the word "or" out of your vocabulary, Gary,
Right.
and replace it with "and."
Right.
So don't say, I'm going to have Zoom Ed and I'm going to have the Aquarium and Pet History Museum. I'm going to have both.
Yeah.
And, not or.
Yeah.
You're going to have and. And that's what life's all about, is try to do everything you possibly can and enjoy it and do it the right way. And I think we both learned that pretty well.
I think so. Thank you for that, Bob.
Okay, Gary. Yeah.
That's a wrap, guys.
Okay.
I'll see you next time.